Good morning, London. On the front pages of most of today's papers are dominated by allegations against Sir Edward Heath, the late Prime Minister, that he was a child sex abuser. He is the highest profile figure to be embroiled in historical abuse allegations, and the Independent Police Complaints Commission are investigating how officers handled those allegations made in the 90s. Yesterday, police asked for anyone with information relating to allegations against Sir Edward to come forward. Richard Marshall, a clinical psychologist and expert in child abuse, told us earlier he hopes this encourages more people to come forward.
The NSPCC are working with the police in Wiltshire, helping anybody who comes forward. Now, the reason it's crucial, and again, NSPCC are very good in this area, they brought out a report 2 years ago which showed that of the people that came forward, only 10% felt they'd been believed and got support. 90% found that trying to make allegations of abuse led to a really difficult journey for them. They felt they weren't believed, they weren't supported, they weren't protected.
Well, Dr. Samantha Callan is Associate Director for Families and Mental Health at the right-leaning Centre for Social Justice, joins us now. Good morning to you. What do you make of these allegations?
Well, first, I do want to stress that these are allegations. They're on the front of every paper, but that doesn't make them true, and very high-profile people are actually very vulnerable to accusations just now. So that said, it's important to note that the more high-profile the alleged perpetrator, the more traumatic it is for a survivor, I would say, because this huge cognitive dissonance they face. They have gone through, I've met a lot of survivors of sexual abuse. They say it was the end of childhood. It was the most horrendous thing that could have happened, and yet it was completely inexplicable. And very often they feel that they're to blame. And unless an adult steps forward and says this was completely unacceptable, there's no way you're to blame, then they carry this deep trauma for years. And that's why it is so important that there's therapy, that there's help, that there's some acknowledgement. What they have gone through is one of the most profound harms one human can perpetrate on another.
I should say I'm not directly comparing the case of Jimmy Savile with Sir Edward Heath. It's well known that Jimmy Savile was a very prolific sex abuser, and I suppose one of the problems, of the many problems he inflicted on his victims, was that they knew what he'd done to them, but he was being held up as this kind of shining example to the rest of us.
Exactly, and this sense that someone is untouchable who has deeply damaged you, I think, as I said, that's why it must make it even harder, and obviously people like the former Prime Minister, and these are just allegations, but they're affected, they're honoured, and especially when people die, we're very honest about the psychology of someone like Ted Heath. When Margaret Thatcher ousted him as leader of the Conservative Party, but at the same time there's this acknowledgement, well, yes, but he was a towering figure. And that's the problem for children, young adults, older adults, that these high-profile offenders that seem to be, and as I say, we do not know about Heath yet, but they seem to be above the law, but no one's above the law.
Well, we know that no one's above the law now, but there was perhaps you could be forgiven for thinking that certainly was the feeling that in that era.
I think that's what is the most concerning thing that's coming out, the sense that, well, frankly, these children will get over it. They don't really matter anything like as much as someone's reputation. And I think what's happening now is we've completely inverted that, and we're saying no matter how high profile somebody, no matter what they've achieved, and frankly, if they have made a contribution in public life, because everyone acknowledged that actually Savile, strangely, weirdly, he had been seen to have made a contribution, but that quite rightly was completely discredited when these allegations came out. So that's what's got to happen for the victims, because if it doesn't happen, there's this sense of, well, I must be inherently a bad person for this allegedly very good person to have done this thing to me. It's very confusing.
And they must feel completely robbed of any sense of self-worth. What might that lead to, Samantha?
Well, I think that's the very important question. In our work at the Centre for Social Justice, we meet obviously a lot of people, and they've been through this as children or young adults, and frankly, it's not the drugs, the alcohol addiction, the self-harm, the deep-seated mental health problems that they've gone through, often feeling so worthless that, well, so what if I have to sell my body to buy drugs, survival sex in many cases? So what? I'm such a worthless human being. What does it matter? I have nothing to lose. The minute that abuse was perpetrated, it wasn't acknowledged, there wasn't the help. The minute that happened, that hugely eroded their sense that as a human being they mattered at all. The dignity of every single human being was crushed at that time. And I think the after effect of that, not being able to concentrate at school, not being able to achieve, just compounding the sense that these people feel that they just don't matter.
Dr. Samantha Callan, thank you very much. Associate Director for Families and Mental Health at the right-leaning Centre for